Hi, everybody, and welcome to Big Joe's Journal. My name is Joe Tilden, and I'm the host of this program. Well, the presidential debate, the first one at least, is scheduled for Tuesday, which is the 29th of September, and that will be taking place in Cleveland. And the host, I do believe, is going to be Chris Wallace from Fox News. Originally, this thing was set for Notre Dame. And because of the coronavirus and everything else, it just didn't work out. And so it was switched to Cleveland, and I believe the second one is going to be in Miami. And that may be changed because of the uptick in the coronavirus thing. And the third one is either in Memphis or in Nashville, Tennessee. And that was scheduled for some other university, and they also canceled out because of the epidemic that they're having right now. And we're having a little trouble with the clock here again, so we'll see what happens. Well, we'll see the two of them going face to face. Joe Biden, Donald Trump. And I kind of think that Mr. Biden's more relaxed style is going to serve him real well in this one. I think he's going to catch up Mr. Trump in a number of falsehood, a number of lies, and so forth. Looking at some of the polls, of course, Trump's chances have improved a great deal, especially in southern states. Georgia, I think it's pretty close in Georgia. I think Trump has a 47-46 lead there. Florida is kind of a toss-up. It's something like 48-48. In Texas, Biden has about a 1-point lead. That's another Trump state. But I think states that Mr. Trump carried in 2016, like Pennsylvania, like Wisconsin, like Michigan, I think they're going to be swinging the other way this time around. They all have Democratic governors. In Wisconsin, the legislature is still pretty much Republican controlled. But they do have a Democratic governor. He was kind of a long shot, but he was elected governor. And in those three states, let's say Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, in 2016, Trump carried those states by about a 1% margin. So it's going to slide either way, one way or another. And it'll be interesting. This first debate, of course, apparently every major network is carrying it. Usually you have a debate and it's on one network and then the next one's on another, so forth. But in this particular case, it seems to me that all the major networks, I know Fox, of course, is the host network. And Fox will be carrying it. And CBS, NBC, ABC, I imagine CNN, and certainly C-SPAN will be carrying the first major debate between the two presidential candidates, former Vice President Joe Biden and the incumbent there, Donald J. Trump. And some of the other states there, Biden is in front by, I won't say a comfortable margin. If you're going to look at the polls, anything a poll tells you is not money in the bank. But Biden appears to have a very comfortable lead, something like 50-41 in Michigan. Minnesota, definitely, way ahead in Minnesota, leading in Wisconsin. Some of the diehard Republican states, he's running a close race in Ohio. And he may even carry Ohio, considering the number of Republicans in Ohio that have distanced themselves from the incumbent president. And I think the number of Republican bigwigs and military people that are saying we can't stand 4 more years of Trump, I think this is going to have a big influence. And also if the young folks get out and vote. In fact, if everybody gets out and vote, then of course, this time around, it's very, very easy to vote. You can do it by mail. You don't necessarily have to go into the polls. You can pretty well figure out who your candidate's going to be and who you favor, and mark your ballot. Make sure you sign all the places you have to sign, put them in the correct envelope, send it back into your town clerk or your city clerk, and your votes will be counted come the 3rd of November. The big thing in Washington now, of course, is confirming a new justice for the Supreme Court. And it's going to be, the nominee is a former law professor at the University of Notre Dame. And I can't think what her first name is, but her last name is Brennan. And she's 48 years old. She's the mother of 7 kids. And she will be the youngest member of the Supreme Court by far. Usually people get appointed to the Supreme Court, they're in their 50s or they're in their 60s. So at 48, she'll be a youngster on the Supreme Court. And of course, she will fill the seat that was vacated by the late Justice Goldberg. And there seems to be quite a contrast between her political beliefs and the causes that Justice Goldberg supported in her career. You know, Justice Goldberg, although she was small in stature, she certainly was a giant as far as the legal process in this country is concerned. And she established a number of firsts. She was the first woman to lie in state in the nation's capital. Her remains lie in the state on the platform, or whatever you want to call it, that was originally built for Abraham Lincoln. She's the first one of the Jewish faith to lie in state in the Capitol. And of course, she's buried at Arlington National Cemetery. But Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she had a very, very strong influence on the course of the Supreme Court over the past few years. One of the great things that we look at, some of the contrasts in politics, we say here are two people on two opposite sides of the fence, but they found common ground. And of course, Justice Anthony Scalia, whose political views were almost the opposite of Justice Goldberg, but they had a common link in that they both loved opera. And so because of this, they were good friends, although they debated and they argued and so forth on different sides of each legal issue. They approached it from different angles. Well, they both had an influence on the directions that the Supreme Court has taken. And you know, another thing, you look at these, you say, these people have got to be foes. Joe Biden and John McCain, one a Democrat, one a Republican. They were the best of buddies. But in Congress, they could fight like crazy. As Joe Biden said after John McCain's death, said, we were like brothers. We'd fight each other like hell. But when it was all over, we came back and were very good friends. And it's rather interesting that John McCain's widow has endorsed Joe Biden. Of course, Mr. Trump had no use for Senator McCain. McCain was the true American hero. The fact that he suffered 5 years in a POW camp, North Vietnam, while another traitor of this country, Jane Fonda, was entertaining North Vietnamese leaders. He came back from the war, still continued to serve his country, served in Congress as a representative and then as a senator from Arizona, and was the Republican nominee for president in 1908, or 1908. In 2008, I'm dating myself here, maybe a senile moment or something. But John McCain was a true American hero in every sense of the word. And yet the incumbent president had no use for him. In fact, the McCain family didn't want Trump having anything to do with John McCain's funeral. And Trump has never hidden his dislike of John McCain. He's had to backtrack a little bit. He got caught saying things about some of our World War II veterans, put their lives on the line, saved the world from Nazism. And he certainly looked down at them, called them losers. Those that gave their lives didn't mean anything to him, didn't hurt Trumpy any. And you wonder, you know, how a guy like that can really should be the President of the United States. He's put down our servicemen. He's ignored advice from our intelligence services. He listens more to an enemy of this country like Vladimir Putin than he does his own intelligence people. In fact, I doubt very much that he ever reads any intelligence reports. He's too busy probably watching television, busy on his tweets, lying through his teeth. And this is the individual that 4 years ago this country elected to be our president. The worst president in our history. And how some people can still go on and support him is beyond me. Look at the record, folks. Well, some people are saying, well, he's good for the economy. No, he's not. The economy rebounded after the recession of 2008 because of the policies of the Obama administration. Trump coming in office has reaped the benefits of the reforms put in place by the Obama administration. And he's trying to claim them as his own. And of course, when he gets hit with a challenge, like this pandemic, and the economy starts to collapse, he still goes around lying through his teeth about it, saying this is the greatest economy we ever had, and so forth. In Trumpy's mind, everything he does or everything he had is the greatest. And that shows that mentally he's not functioning very well, if he ever did. Well, we have the chance, of course, you know, to remedy that and to change it. And it's just not working out that way. As many people are saying, well, maybe we want to give him 4 more years, or so forth and so on. I can see why a certain group of people would want to keep him in there. You talk about white supremacy, and certainly Trump is an advocate of that. You have to look at the way he has put down the people who were not of the traditional Caucasian line that were elected to Congress. The 4 amigos, women that were elected to the House of Representatives. One was a Muslim. They weren't your traditional white man type politician that served in Washington back at the beginning of this country. But it shows that the country is changing. We're evolving. We're becoming a greater nation. We're fulfilling the promise that this country represents to the rest of the world. And so the people we send to Congress aren't all going to be named Jones and Smith and Thompson and Johnson and other Anglo-type names. We're going to have people in there like Alexandria Cortez and people of that nature. we're going to have more women. In fact, with the election of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, we'll have our first non-white, first female vice president. And I think in 2024, we will have our first female president. We have made different strides. When people years ago said, no, this is impossible, this is not going to happen. Well, John Kennedy sort of broke that barrier in 1960 when he became the first Roman Catholic to become president, the first non-Mason in many years to be president of the United States. Gerald Ford broke another barrier when he succeeded to the presidency of Richard Nixon, a man who was divorced, never had a chance of being president of the United States. Well, Jerry Ford, of course, was never elected. He succeeded because of the Nixon tragedy and so forth. But he picked as his vice president Nelson Rockefeller, who was also a divorced man. This was something that years ago would never happen. But the country was changing. It's accepting things that we said one time were not acceptable. Barack Obama in 2008. If somebody had said 30, 40 years ago, the day is going to come when we are going to have a black man in the White House, they would have said, you're nuts. You don't know what you're talking about. But Barack Obama was elected. Our First Lady, Michelle Obama, her grandfather was a slave. In fact, probably some of her ancestors might have been involved in building the White House and building the Capitol. As most of Washington, most of the old buildings that were there were originally built by slave labor. Well, people are saying we'll never have a woman president. We're going to have one. I think Joe Biden will be elected. He'll serve one term. He'll attempt to bring the country back together, try to calm things down, give us back our civilization, unite us again. But at 82, he's not going to be up for another presidential campaign. That takes a lot out of a man. And I believe as vice president, Kamala Harris will be the Democratic nominee, and I think she's going to be elected. And despite what the Trump people are saying about her and some of these other right-wing crackpots, I think she's going to be a darn good president, be a good leader. The country is changing. We're moving ahead. We're looking at some of the other things that are behind us, and we're saying, well, that happened in that day. It's not sufficient for today. And we have that ideal, which was the second paragraph in the Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with the inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We haven't reached that goal yet. We're a long ways from it. But we're getting there, and it's taking time to do it. The first major step, of course, was ending slavery. It took a civil war to do that, plus the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. The 15th Amendment gave the right to vote to all men. Previous to that, you had to be a property owner to vote. In fact, we even paid poll taxes right up until the 60s. If you wanted to vote, you had to pay a poll tax, whether you're a man or woman or what. If you didn't pay a poll tax, you didn't get to vote. Poll taxes, of course, now have been abolished. But the end of slavery, the 13th Amendment ending slavery, the 15th Amendment allowing all males to vote, whether you own property or not, whether you were black or white or Native American or whatever. you're allowed to vote. And poll taxes more or less came in as a means to try to limit the number of people that could vote. That's why they were declared unconstitutional and went out the window. Well, it's interesting to note when the 15th Amendment came in, allowing all men to vote, it was opposed by the women's suffragette unit because it didn't allow women to vote. The right to allow women to vote would come with the 19th Amendment, passed 100 years ago and signed into law by President Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson, while he signed that law allowing women to vote, he was very strongly racist. And he was noted for his disdain of African Americans and other non-white minorities. But he was a very, very sick man at the end of his term, and probably his second wife, who was more or less running the country, de facto, maybe, I think she probably persuaded him to sign that after it had been passed by the states. Now, it's interesting, when the 19th Amendment passed, there were 48 states, so it took 3/4 of a state to get the amendment passed. And the 36th state that passed it and made it part of the Constitution was Tennessee. Now, I say, well, where did Vermont stand on women's right to vote? Vermont was one of the 12 states that voted against it and voted very strongly against it. And that was because our governor at the time was Governor Clement. As you know, he had the big house down where the College of St. Joseph is now. He was the governor at the time, and he was very much opposed to women voting. Now, I don't know what the problem was, whether he and the missus weren't getting along or what. But the state of Vermont voted down the 19th Amendment. But once it became federal law, of course, supersedes state law. And so the right for women to vote as federal law also became the law in the state of Vermont. And of course, we have seen women become more and more and more active in our governments. We have a woman Speaker of the House. She is the second one to serve in that capacity, and that's Mitzi Johnson. We have a young woman running for lieutenant governor. Chances are, the next legislative session, the president pro tem of the Senate will be a woman. The minority leader in the House is a representative from Poultney, Patty McCoy. And there are more and more women being elected to the legislature. There are also more women in Congress. Mitch McConnell, the majority leader of the Senate from Kentucky, is being opposed by a woman as he seeks to keep his seat. And she's running a very, very effective campaign. It stands a very, very good chance of ditching Mitch, which would be a great thing for the country. She is a military veteran. I believe she's flown a number of combat missions in Iraq and Afghanistan. And the last I heard, she was pretty much running neck and neck with old Mitch. And if she could win that election, that'd be a huge step forward, a huge step forward. So, the said time moves on. Well, 2020 is going to go down as one of the most unusual years in our history. And those of you that are sports fans and have been watching baseball and watching football, it seems real strange to see these teams taking place and all the empty seats in the stadiums, especially during baseball season. You know, as you watch the game on TV, they had this piped-in crowds cheering. But you looked around the stadiums, they had all these cutouts put in the various seats, so it looked like some people were there. But it had to be rather strange, you know, if you're a professional baseball player, and there you are, there's nobody in the ballpark, and you're playing more or less before an empty house. And of course, baseball season from 162 games down to 60. We now have the final 16 teams that are in the postseason, and that begins this week. The American League on Tuesday, and the National League on Wednesday. The top seeds, Tampa Bay in the American League, the LA Dodgers in the National League. And the way the seed's going to go, the first best 2 out of 3, the first round. And it matches 8 at 1, 7 at 2, 6 at 3, 5 at 4. And then you'll have the 4 winners, and they will engage in the best 3 out of 5. And then you'll get down to the semifinals, which will be 4 out of 7. And then the World Series, which is going to be played in Texas, in a huge stadium with very, very few people there. That will decide the World Series. Now, I'm having a bit of a problem here. Is the clock I usually have in front of me is stuck, and I'm not really sure how much time I have left. So if my engineer is out there, if she could kind of let me know how we're doing here. Okay, thank you. So there we go. It's good to have somebody handy like that. So with about a minute to go, those of you that are going to get your ballots in the mail today, take them, read them through, make sure you sign them everywhere it has to be signed so your vote will be valid. Put it in the proper envelope, mail it back in. The sooner you get it, read it over, vote, send it back in. A great opportunity. Nobody has an excuse for not voting. But here it is, and this is your opportunity. So with that, may Almighty God in His infinite wisdom continue to bless these United States of America. God love you. Have a great week. Watch the debate. Don't forget to vote. We'll see you all next week.